we weren't selling tour packages as much as we
got your
needed
haircut.
to buy.
You get your haircut, too.
So that was an interesting.
Yes,
connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's growing on you. Yeah.
Oh, it's done a little bit of a lot of things.
Oh, it's caught.
Thank you very much. One more here.
Well, this might be the same.
Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely.
I've been interested in it for a while because it seems like you're seeing more and more and more foreclosures around, and I can't even get into the websites because they're all asking for, you know, signing up for this or that, you know, so that you can.
And you
see
may
the
have to.
listings, and unfortunately, that doesn't suit me. But, I know there are other ways which you're gonna tell us about, right?
Somewhat, yeah, because some of those you do have to sign up for the sites in order to get into them. But we're gonna break up the hour. We're gonna do a half hour talking about the listing side of foreclosures. And then we're gonna talk about the buy side of foreclosures. But my very first 5 minutes right here are gonna be explaining the difference. Okay?
Okay.
And because when I taught this last year, oh, let me turn my phone down because it will ring in the middle of all this and it'll. I realized last year when I taught this class that there's some confusion about what an actual foreclosure is versus a short sale. So we're gonna talk about that too. Are we all ready? Yeah, we're all set to go. I think we have everybody here. There's people on Zoom. They'll be able to hear. Whoever's on Zoom, I'm sorry, I'm probably not gonna interact directly. I'm not in front of the screen. But feel free to call me after the class if you have specific questions. So, foreclosure versus a short sale. A short sale is not short. It takes a long time to get through a short sale. But what that short means is that the bank is going to accept less money than is owed on the house. You can have a short sale that is not a foreclosure. People can be current on their mortgage. They've been making their payments. They're not behind in any way other than maybe the house is in disrepair. It needs a lot of work, and its value does not equal what they owe on it. So
How does the bank know?
that it's a short sale, it's usually the homeowner who's going to initiate that with the help of an agent. When I've listed short sale homes, I've started the process with the seller contacting their lender. We sit together and talk to the lender. I explain to the lender that, you know, based on comps, based on, you know, my evaluation of the property, that they're not going to be able to get the amount that is owed on the mortgage.
So does the seller usually initiate the sale thinking that they may, and then the agent educates them?
You should know they're in a short sale situation potentially before you even list it.
Okay.
Because any offers you get on a short sale property are contingent on the bank approving it.
And how would you know that it's a short sale unless you do all the work and?
Well, when you do the network sheet for your sellers to show them, you know, hey, this is what you could get for your house.
Yep.
Here's the costs of the sale. One of the costs of the sale is how much do you owe on the mortgage? So if the number on the bottom is really close or it's in the negative, then you know it's a short sale.
So you're educating your seller versus them saying to you, I would like you to sell my house, it's gonna be a short sale.
They're not gonna know it's a short sale.
That's, yeah, that was
Yeah.
kind of the question.
Yeah, you gotta educate them on that.
Yeah.
But there is a process with short sales. You have to contact their lender. And, you know, you're giving them that net worksheet. You're saying, here's the costs of the sale, here's what they're gonna net from the sale, and it's not enough to cover the outstanding mortgage. they've got pages of applications through that lender for short sale approval. Because the bottom line is if your seller has money sitting in account somewhere and they have the means in which to pay the difference, they're gonna have to pay the difference. But if it's a financial duress, they don't have the money, they don't have any way to come up with that money, then there's a whole application process and that lender has to approve any offer that gets accepted because they have to agree to waive that difference. And some lenders will actually send a 1099 at the end of the year to the seller, making them claim that difference as income. That they, released X amount of dollars and now they have to claim it as income. So that's something the attorneys will usually handle with the lender to see if they're gonna waive that and not do that to them, or if they're gonna have to claim that discrepancy as income. So that's a short sale. A foreclosure is basically when somebody's so behind on their mortgage that the bank has initiated a foreclosure proceeding. I think the confusion here is that when we go in the MLS or our buyers are looking online and they're seeing all these foreclosure properties and we're seeing them, HUD or government owned, that's a HUD or government foreclosure. Or it's just straight up foreclosure, some lender foreclosed on the house. The bank now owns it and they're selling it. So if they've got it in their comments that you've got to go to this website or that website in order to submit an offer, they have their own paperwork a lot of times, you're going to have to set up an account. I have my website username and password book that I keep, and I gave an example on the front page of this. These are some of the websites that are commonly used for submission of offers or for seeing the property, getting more information, auctions, things like that. But you have to set up an account.
Do they cost money?
No,
Okay.
no. So we're gonna do the listing side of this. And I've done this numerous times. When you have a seller who's behind on their mortgage, I don't care who you are, if you are 30 days past due on a mortgage payment, that lender is gonna file a lis pendens with the county clerk's office. And all that lis pendens says is, we're the #1 creditor and we're first in line. It's not a foreclosure notice. It doesn't mean they're in foreclosure. It means the lender is preserving their first lien position on that property. That's what a lis pendens is. Zillow, all of these websites, they troll the county clerk's office for these lis pendens, and those are what show up on Zillow as pre-foreclosures. That home is probably not in foreclosure. It's a seller who missed a mortgage payment. I don't know about you, but I've missed a mortgage payment before. But I wasn't in foreclosure and I wasn't losing my house and I made the mortgage payment. But my house was on Zillow showing as a pre-foreclosure. So
With your approval?
no, they as soon as they see a lis pendens, they list it as a pre-foreclosure. Because they don't say it's for sale, they just say it's a pre-foreclosure. They're 30 days delinquent on a mortgage payment. If you go into like 90 days delinquency on a mortgage, that's when the lender may file their first petition saying we're going to start the foreclosure process. The misconception here is that people start getting these notices and they just think they don't have any other, choice in the matter, that they're getting foreclosed on, all is done. Not true. And I've done several of these through the years. Somebody's, gets their first foreclosure notice. I've actually worked with people who were a year into getting these notices and having court appearances and, trying to work with the judge and the bank. And foreclosure is a long process. It's not like the banks file a petition and the judge goes, yep, here you go, we'll deed it over to you. There's a huge process involved.
So if a client calls you and asks about a particular house that says foreclosure. And,
Is it listed?
well, that's the question. I guess you would
Pre-
go to
pre-
MLS and
see if it's
see if
listed.
it's listed, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Pre-foreclosures are not listed.
Okay,
Pre-foreclosure means there is no foreclosure action. Zillow's assuming that because they're 30 days past due and a bank filed a lis pendens, they're assuming that these people are gonna be in foreclosure.
are they putting it on their website as a foreclosure? Or
Pre.
pre-foreclosure?
It says pre-foreclosure. The actual foreclosure sale is one where the whole court process is done and the bank now owns the house. But as long as the owners own that house, could have been getting foreclosure notices for a year. But if they still own the house, as a realtor, your job is to sit down and say, hey, let's look at how much your house is worth. Because we could sell the house, pay off that bank, and you get to keep the equity. Because if it goes through that whole foreclosure process and the bank gets the house, 9 times out of 10, that seller is getting nothing. Any equity is gonna get eaten up by attorney's fees, late fees, interest, everything that bank is throwing at them. So when you meet with somebody and they say, well, I'm getting all these foreclosure notices, da, 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 da. First thing you wanna do is connect them with an attorney who's gonna submit their notice of appearance to that court and say, hey, I represent this seller now. We're gonna be listing the house and selling it. The judges would rather have that than have that foreclosure go through. So a lot of times the judge will grant the extension of time for that seller to list the house and sell it outright, especially if that sale is gonna pay off the lender. But now that seller also gets to keep any equity. Which brings me to sometimes you have they're in a foreclosure proceeding, you're gonna try and sell the house. But then there's not enough money to pay off the loan, so now you're dealing with. Cause it's not a foreclosure sale yet. The bank doesn't own it. But you are contacting that lender saying, hey, I know you have started a foreclosure proceeding on this house. I'm so-and-so, Gloria with Keller Williams. I've been doing a market analysis on this property. I see that my client owes you $175,000. Based on the market, you're only gonna get 125. Would you be willing to enter into a short sale agreement with my seller? So that we can get the house listed and sold and avoid a foreclosure on my client's credit. So again, they need an attorney involved right away who can stall the court proceedings and can work with you and the lender to secure short sale approval. And I mean, when they're in a foreclosure proceeding and there is equity, you're gonna list the house just like you would any other house. It's a normal sale. It's not a foreclosure sale. It hasn't been foreclosed on. When you see a foreclosure in the MLS, it means the bank owns it. The seller, the original owners are out of the picture now.
So you don't show that in the MLS when you list it?
No, you don't need to. It's a normal sale.
Okay.
It's like, I own my house. Okay, my name is on the deed. I own it. I stop making payments. 6 months from now, I'm gonna get my first notice of foreclosure from the lender. And the actual official notice. Prior to that, I'm gonna get threatening letters. We're gonna be forced to file foreclosure against you. We're gonna be forced to do this. Lots of threatening letters. And then I'll get served my first official notice, summons and complaint for a foreclosure. Okay. I still own that house. They don't own it. They want to own it because they want to take it back so they can sell it and pay off the money I owe. But I still own it. I ignore that first notice. 30 days later, I get another notice. Maybe another month later, now I'm getting a summons to appear in court, my first court appearance. And now I meet with a realtor who says, hey, your house is worth $250,000 and you only owe 175. Why don't we list it and sell it? You'll pay off that loan and you'll have some money in your pocket to start over with. Great. They're gonna list my house just like anybody else, and it's gonna be a normal sale. It's gonna be me, the seller, agreeing to sell it to somebody for X amount of dollars. And the attorneys are gonna do what they do on every other sale, which is pay off the existing mortgage. And they pay it off, and then I get my check and I go on with my life, and there was no foreclosure. It never got foreclosed on. Does that make sense? On the flip side of that, if I ignore all those notices, I don't talk to an agent, I don't get an attorney, I don't appear at any of those court appearances, I just let it go. Then I'm gonna start getting the notices that the foreclosure has been granted. I have 30 days to get that out of the house. You better not be there, and you could show up one day and there's, deadbolts on the house and you can't even get in there anymore. So if that happens, now that bank is gonna list it and sell it, and I'm getting nothing, and I'm no longer the owner. The bank is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's on the list side. I'm trying to like alleviate the confusion people have around seeing a foreclosure sale and what an actual foreclosure is. Because I think it gets used in a very broad way. So again, if the bank has not taken over ownership of that house and no judge has signed it over to a bank, then those people can sell it outright as a normal sale, and you should not be putting in there that it's a foreclosure sale, because it's not. On the other side, if it's a short sale situation, then that does need to be in the listing as, the type of sale is a short sale. And by the time you list it, you should have very clear instructions from the lender. How much time do they want to approve offers? What is the range, the basic range that they're going to be willing to waive, between what's owed and what you accept. Because remember, when I, as an agent, have a buyer and they want to buy a short sale, part of my offer has to include that contingency addendum for short sales that says we give this much time to the bank to approve this offer. Because, if the bank wants, let's say the bank wants 45 days, we're going to put it in there. Okay, we'll give you 45 days to approve this offer. But if 60 days go by, the buyer gets to back out and move on to another property because the lender didn't meet that contingency. Does that make sense? It's like another out. But you should already know from working with the lender to start the short sale approval process that they're going to expect this much time to review offers. The seller can still accept the offer, but that offer is contingent on short sale approval from the lender. And they have to accept the offer as well.
Hey, Gloria.
I just saw one that was a foreclosure that an agent listed, but when you look at the foreclosure notice up at the top in MLS, it says it's owned by the bank. So wouldn't the bank be selling it and not the agent? Or does the agent get hired by the bank?
Agents get hired by the banks
Okay.
to list foreclosures.
Okay.
Now that often does cost money. You can go to any bank website and go to their foreclosure department. I know in where Marlene and I live, we have some agents there. They pay a monthly fee to be the foreclosure experts in that area. So that lender gives them all of their foreclosure sales, and they go list those properties for that lender and their foreclosures. The bank owns them, but those agents are being paid to sell those properties. Listing foreclosure homes, I will tell you, is they want weekly reports. They want, well, in their weekly reports, they want to know how many showings, You know, you've got to keep track of all of that. They want weekly photographs of the property to show its condition. They have a lot of requirements for managing that listing and submitting proof to them of what is being done to market it, how often it's showing, stuff like that. And you don't really get to counsel the bank. And then each lender has their own process for taking in offers, you know? I think it's on here, like home path for short sales. That's a common one used by lenders for short sale offers. Prop offers is one of the websites where they process and take in offers. But it's usually in the private remarks that'll tell you this is where to submit offers. In this packet, I'm giving an example of a contract I had done years ago. It was a foreclosed property. Bank owned it. My buyer went in, we wrote an offer, we used our MLS standard board forms. But this lender required all of these pages of their own documents that needed to be signed. So often you submit that offer, but then you're gonna get back a 10 to 20 page document from that lender that says, great, we'll accept your offer, but you guys sign all this other stuff too. And they have their own process for doing all that. And here's another thing, and it was for this property, the one I give you the example thing for. This property, we went for a final walkthrough. And I was on like the third step up from the basement floor when my client said, stop. And I was like, what? And she said, don't take another step, look down. The basement was 3 foot full of water. I mean, just 3 foot of water. And I called the listing agent and I said, hey, we're closing in 2 days and that basement is 3 foot full of water. And he's like, well, it's a foreclosure, the bank's not gonna do anything. And I said, oh, no. We did not agree to buy it with an in-house pool. It was not in this condition when we agreed to buy it. So I called the attorney dealt with that lender's attorney. And yeah, they pumped that basement out, they replaced the sump pump. And they did all of that. And I mean, it pushed off closing for 2 weeks. But my client was not buying it full of water. So there's this misconception that the lenders will literally do nothing. But when you look at it from and I'm saying this, I'm not an attorney, okay? So I'm not trying to like be an attorney, but the fact of it is, you're talking contract, and in the contracts, it specifically says that you are buying it in the condition it's in on the day you agree to buy it. So something like that, where you go back to say, I'm just making sure it's in the same condition it was in when I agreed to buy it. And you find that, well, it's not in the same condition it was in when I agreed to buy it. So the seller needs to do something about that. And it doesn't matter that they're a bank. They still need to make sure that it's in the same condition it was in when you agreed to buy it. That would be like writing a contract on a house and there's a fire and half the house is burned down and you go for final walkthrough and go, this is not what I agreed to buy. And the buyer can walk away at that point, or the seller's got to make it right, you know? So that same thing applies, even if it's a foreclosure. On the buy side, well, I think we're kind of flipped into the buy side now. On the buy side, when you are educating your clients, again, it's that knowledge of the difference between if it's a short sale or if it's a foreclosure and how to coach them on that. When it is a short sale, you gotta be really clear with your buyers that if you want to be able to control the process, don't write an offer on a short sale because you will have zero control. You are at the bank's mercy. If you want to close within 6 months, absolutely within 6 months, don't do it because there's no guarantees you're going to close within 6 months. And what's the point of going through 6 months and missing out on other properties just to have you not close and now you're backing out of the deal? So anybody who wants to write an offer on short sale, needs to be very, very clear that it could take up to a year to close on that property. And trust me, I have counseled buyers that way before, like, want to make sure you're really, really clear on this. Only to have them 6 months into it, back out of it. And I'm going, I told you. Do you remember when we had this conversation? You know, so make sure they're very clear on how long it can potentially take. Because again, you're not gonna be able to bully the bank. So that's on the short sale side. Foreclosure sales. Really read the attachments that you will have on a foreclosure listing. Because a lot of these foreclosures, they aren't willing to accept mortgages on them. They just want a cash deal. They don't want a mortgage. They don't want a bank coming in there and doing an appraisal and requesting or requiring repairs. You know, because you might see them in there. They say cash or rehab loan only. And that can happen even on a normal listing, that you'll see that. And I know I've sometimes called and questioned it, like, why won't you take a conventional loan? Well, the house needs work, right? But if my client has a conventional mortgage and they want to pay to do the work themselves, why does it have to be a rehab loan? It probably doesn't.
Or if you go 3K.
Well, that's a rehab loan.
Yeah.
That's a renovation loan. But on the foreclosure ones, those lenders are the ones saying, we're not willing to entertain X, Y, or Z. So, you know, you can call the agent, make sure that wasn't them doing that and that was the lender's requirement. But, you know, buyers get excited because they're like, look at, this is a foreclosure and it's only listed for $90,000. We can afford it. We want to buy it. And they're all gung ho and they want you to write an offer up. And you look at the listing and it says very clearly, it's got to be a rehab loan or cash only. So don't waste everybody's time, including your own. You need to counsel those buyers and say, well, that lender is only willing to accept renovation loans or cash. That's
Is
it.
it harder to get a rehab loan?
Rehab loans, I think every lender has their own versions of them, and FHA has the 203K rehab loan. The difficulty with them, which it's kind of a conundrum because these buyers that are all excited about the price of this property because it's what they can afford, also usually don't have 20% to put down.
Which is what a rehab.
Which is what a rehab loan requires. You need to put 20% down of your own money. And then there's a process that you have to go through for a renovation loan where it's usually, I think that's 3. Have you done one recently? I haven't done one in like 8 years.
The one for Laura.
How many bids did they need? They needed like X amount of estimates.
I think it was 3.
It was 3.
And the vendor that you use to do the rehab has to be insured for X amount of dollars, whatever the bank says.
And they have to be vetted.
Yep,
I did know that, yes.
Yeah.
yep. And if the mortgage company doesn't approve that vendor, that one's out, gotta get another one.
Oh. And they don't, the lenders won't tell you like what vendor you have to use, but those vendors have to meet their minimum requirements in order to be included and used if they want to get paid. Go ahead.
And then the inspector tells you what has to be done.
Yep.
And it's gotta be like the 203K that we were doing for Laura, then,
And you're talking the appraiser. They send their appraiser to evaluate the property and determine what has to be done.
inspector too.
Oh, really?
First, the inspector has to tell you what has to be done, if the electric has to be done, but the husband was going to do it.
Right, it's gotta be the
A vendor.
licensed
Yeah.
And he's gonna tell you that, yes, that has to be done. Even though they wanted the living room done and the kitchen redone. No, that's fine the way it is, but you have to update the electric.
And the only way they can do those other things too is if there's enough equity in the two appraisals to afford borrowing more money
Mhm.
to do those other things.
Mhm.
What was I just gonna?
That was a fiasco.
Well, I was gonna say, the rehab loans went through, I wonder if it was, what year was it? I was already licensed, I got licensed in 2011. Cause when I started, you could get rehab loans and you could do the work yourself. You know, people could borrow that extra money and go in and do the work on the house themselves. But then there was this, and I started seeing them a lot, foreclosures that were also short sales. And the people owed more money than the house was worth because they borrowed that extra money, but they didn't use it to do the things on the house they were supposed to do, which would have raised the value of the home. So the value of the home never went up, but they had borrowed all that extra money. So at some point, they kind of went through and redid how these rehab loans and renovation loans were gonna work. Because they wanted to know that the work is actually being done. And that you didn't have some weekend marauder trying to, do all the new plumbing in the house and they weren't a plumber. They didn't know what they were doing and made it worse, So they changed it somehow, so now they want vetted contractors, they have to be insured, they have to, be a professional in their field so that the lender knows, yeah, we gave them an extra $50,000 because they're gonna replace the roof, they're gonna replace the whole electric box, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do that, and then the house is gonna be worth this, so our investment is secure. If they default, the house is worth this and we can sell it and recoup all that money. So they kind of are controlling now that if we're gonna loan you that money, we're gonna make sure you're using it for what you said you were gonna use it for.
I don't remember, did they have to be inspected afterwards? Too?
I think some of them
The
require it.
contractor did?
I think some of them require it. I do know, like it used to be the bank gave the money to the person borrowing it. Like you went to closing, you closed on the house and you got your big extra check and you were supposed to go do all these repairs with it. And people weren't doing that. They were taking that money and putting it into other things like paying off a car, paying off their student loan, buying new furniture. So nothing changed with the value of the home. I do know that now the renovation loans, the bank is paying the draws to the contractor directly. So you're essentially closing twice. You're closing on the purchase of the home. And then the contractors are going in and doing the work and the bank is paying them as they go. And then once the work is all complete, there is another appraisal that comes in and says, all this work's been done, the home is now worth this much. And then it's almost like a second closing. And everything gets wrapped into one mortgage. Does that make sense? Yeah. So they're a pita. They're a pita, but they're doable, they're workable. And if you want to do renovation loans and work with those, I'd suggest getting with a lender who does a lot of them and talking with some other agents who regularly navigate those to see how they, like what contractors do they use? It'd be great if you had a list of vendors that were already vetted, and sometimes that lender can even give you a list of, here's the vendors that are already vetted. If you send us 3 estimates from these lenders, we'll be able to approve them faster. So there's that. HUD or government owned, those are still foreclosures. They're just HUD or government owned foreclosures over a lender. That's like, your FHA, your VA, your USDA. That's what those are. So it's still the same process. It went through a foreclosure. It still went through the whole court system, but now it's a government owned foreclosure versus a bank. That makes sense too?
Mhm.
Do you have in there our number at the office?
For when you're like putting offers in on HUD homes. I don't know if they have it in here.
Remember that we had to, I had to do it?
Yeah, you can get it from Bob.
Right.
He can give you that number.
When you're going into HUD, they ask you for. Oh. Our
Um,
brokerages.
it's like a
You mean
HUD.
like a license number or not a telephone number?
No, not
No,
a telephone
it's-
number, we've got that.
Some sort of ID.
Yeah,
It is, it's like a HUD something ID. Because there's also HUD keys. Like
Like what?
HUD keys.
Keys.
Yeah, when HUD lists homes, they use certain lock boxes. Usually like it's like a keyed lock.
Mhm.
And you have, like our office should have a set of HUD keys. And those are the keys you would use to access a HUD property. Yeah. Although I've dealt with HUD homes too, that just had a regular combo lockbox on them.
Mhm.
So again, it depends on who you're dealing with. Yeah, what is that? It's like a HUD identification number or something,
that's fine.
but it has to be, like some of these websites, like the HUD Home Store. You have to be able to put in that information and say, this is our office's HUD identification number. Hello.
Better the number.
There is an extra packet here. That's okay, it's gonna be on Zoom, so you should have, these staples are coming out, they didn't go all the way through, so here's the. I should back up here and see if there's any questions in the. Hi, Kim, Jenny, and Heather. Hi.
Hi, I actually did have a question. Can you hear me?
To my folks on Zoom, do we have any questions? If you do, throw it in the chat, because I don't know how to unmute or talk to you through this. But if you throw it in the chat, I'm happy to answer some questions.
Good morning, Gloria. How you feeling?
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
I'm getting there. I'm feeling better.
Okay, good. I have a question. You say for short sale, the lender has to approve the sale. Does this offer have to be present to the lender too, or just the seller?
It does have to be presented to the lender as well. Every short sale offer you write, there is a contingency addendum that's in the forms for a board. And it has a whole paragraph for short sale approvals. So the seller, you're gonna sit down with the seller and go, here's the offer. Let's do a network sheet and see what your costs of sale are gonna be at this purchase price. And you get down to the bottom and you see if there's, that negative number. And then, which you're already planning on, because you've already done all of these numbers. But then once the seller accepts it, you have to send it to the lender. And by now you have a contact. You have somebody assigned to this property to manage and handle this short sale. So you're gonna send them the offer and say, we have an accepted offer. The seller has accepted it. Please see the contingency addendum. You as the lender, you have 30 days or 40 days, whatever it is, to approve this offer and agree to these terms. So the lender now has it and they have to approve it.
Thank you.
Hold on 1 second. How do I turn up the volume on that? Is that button over there? Okay. I just gotta turn up the volume so I can hear you better. That's it, right? Try talking now.
Oh, me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello, hello.
So you got my answer?
Yes, and you answered another question I was gonna ask you, but you already answered it.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions?
Can you hear me? Hi, I'm sorry. I'm in a waiting room at the surgical center, so I'm kind of whispering. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. When you are doing either of those sales, is there ever commission for the buyer that the bank will approve? Or is it just under, are we just assuming that the buyer's agent will not be getting paid from the lender and or the seller?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. So with all of the changes that have gone down, you are still going to ask as the buyer's agent, you're still gonna write it in there. You're gonna say, buyer's agent wants to be compensated X amount of dollars. What I will tell you, and this has happened to me on 2 short sales that I've done. Sometimes the lender will require that the agents take less. So I've had, a short sale listing where I said, 3 to the listing agent, 3 to a buyer's agent. And the lender came back and they were willing to approve the whole contract as long as each of the agents agreed to drop down to 2.5% and 2.5%. So we had to do up an addendum, have both agents and brokerages sign it and say, we're fine with that. It was in the best interest for the seller and the buyer. But by doing that, the lender netted a little bit more money. So they can ask to renegotiate that, but you can ask for that. And you should. Yep. Great question. What other questions I got?
Box auction one by.
Okay. My girls on there still here? I think we lost Heather. I got Kim on here. Okay.
So looking through these listings. You really do need to know the variety of websites that you have. That represent the seller
Mhm.
in a way. Because some of them. Don't look at all like short sales or foreclosures.
Well, this first one on the back of the first page here,
Right.
that's a HUD or government owned property. That's a foreclosure.
Okay, I'm looking at that. This is only.
It's right up on the top, type of sale, HUD or government owned. That is a foreclosure. But it's a government owned property now.
I still don't see it.
It's near year built.
Oh. Beautiful, thank you.
I check them out all the time.
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
I get stuff from auction.com, but I don't, I'm not diligent about looking. I shouldn't.
There's ones that put auction in there too.
Yeah.
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 Is there a search just for that?
For what?
In the MLS, just for foreclosures?
Yeah, you can select that if you want to just see what foreclosure properties are listed right now. When you are on your search page in the matrix.
Yeah.
It doesn't show up as one of the standard fields, but when you go to the very bottom, there's a little toggle there that says add fields. And you can click add fields and then you scroll down and find type of sale and add that to your search. And then you can, click on it and what am I searching for? HUD homes? Or am I searching for foreclosures? Am I searching for short sales? You'll be able to select from there. So yeah, this first one is a HUD or government owned foreclosure. The second one says bank owned. Bank owned foreclosure.
No, I see it, yeah.
And you'll see in the private remarks, homepath.com. The next one is another bank owned foreclosure. And again, you're looking at another common thing you'll see with these foreclosure sales. Because again, an actual foreclosure sale means the bank owns it. So another thing they commonly do is they charge back to the buyer's agent. Buyer's agent's gonna pay a fee. That out of their, or 175 or whatever, and that's gonna get taken out of your commission. Yeah. A lot of them do that too. The next one, yep, is an auction sale. I don't have as much experience with auctions. I know for my investor clients, I know I did one quite a while ago. But a lot of times, like this one, it said they would take conventional mortgages, but it's not written in stone. It's not every single auction, but most of the auctions I've ever come across, they require 20% down the day your bid is accepted, and they want you to come up with the rest of that money within 30 days. Like, they don't want to wait. They want this off their plate.
I had fun with the auctions that I did.
Really?
Remember Jeff? Pittis?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I stayed up till midnight and was going out the next morning on the motorcycle, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just doing the auction, and I had fun doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you go online and, but you have to create a site. They want all of your agent information. And if you want to get paid as an agent, you want to be registered in there and making those bids on behalf of your client. And you also want to be prepared, because if the bid is accepted, a lot of times you have X amount of time to get the actual written contract over to them. Sometimes they provide the documents, sometimes they want you to provide the documents, but you want to be ready for that too. And like this one, showings are strictly during daylight hours. Guess why that is? No electric. Yeah. And that's another thing you need to talk to your clients about and be very, very diligent in communicating to them. Because a lot of these lenders, they're not going to turn the electric on for an inspection.
Yeah.
They're not going to provide you information on the septic and the well. And, you're going in there and there's no electric. So you don't know if certain things work or not, because there's no electric to try them out. And the gas is shut off, so you don't even know if the heat works. So really and when they say you're buying this as is, they mean it. You're buying it as is. But again, to what I spoke to earlier, even though it says as is, you're buying it as is in the condition it is in the day you write that offer. So if you get to that final walkthrough and something dramatic has changed, you can still fall back on that lender and say, oh, no. You need to take care of this.
Sorry if I missed this, but is there a special offer that you write, or do you use the regular?
For the foreclosures, you're gonna follow whatever the directions are. I typically will have my buyers go ahead and do all of our board forms. I write it out as a typical standard offer. Some of the websites for making these offers, you have to register for the website, you have to enter your client's information, and then they'll ask you specific, like what is their purchase price? What's their target closing date? What's this? What's that? And then if yours gets selected, now they want you to send over your full purchase contract package. And then they'll also probably send you their own 10 to 20 page. You gotta sign all of this too, if you want to move forward. So, yeah, like the one offer here is from, this listing here, Ruth Rowe Campbell. She does all of the, auctions. And this is an example of what her auction contracts look like. Yeah,
That's why you think, you know, like, I don't.
yeah, that's not a board form. Um. And I did some of these, I put them in here to make you familiar with. Oh my gosh, do you recognize this property?
I was I'm looking
Yeah.
at it and I'm going, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's the property. She bought it as a foreclosure. Her and I worked with this property together. Um, yeah. And this is the one where the basement was full of water.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so we got the bank to clean it all up. And then my girl went in there and did, well, you saw, she put a ton of money into mitigating all of that. And new roof, all of that stuff.
Seems like Dave Vanderland does that with Topaz. I know him personally, I've known him for years. But he does, whenever you see a sign Topaz, I know it's Dave
Yeah,
Vanderland.
well, we talked about that earlier. There are agents who pay a monthly fee to some of these lenders.
Yeah.
To be given all of their
Yes,
foreclosure
I'm sure he
properties.
does.
And they do it by territory, by an area. So, you know, you could go to a bank and say, hey, I'd like to service all of your foreclosures within this county or within these towns. And they're making money from you because you're paying X amount, but then they're funneling all that business to you. But then you've got to follow all of their requirements to manage that listing.
That's surprising that he's here in Ontario County too, because he lives in Wayne County.
He might have said, I'm happy to do 4 counties, you know? But then,
Does our friend in our town, does she pay?
uh-huh. Yeah,
I've been talked to her this morning,
oh, really?
aren't I lucky?
Fun. Yeah, and then the last pages here are just examples of what those 10 to 20 page documents that the bank requires can look like. Because they have their own thing. And then at the end, there's another foreclosure property. And I've added the instructions that the agent had in as their attachments, because this is stuff that comes from that lender. And the lender's saying, these are the things that we, you know, need to disclose and want buyers to know up front, yada, yada. So. Any other questions? What do we got? Do we have a pretty clear understanding of the difference between a foreclosure and a short sale? And how that a clear understanding of pre-foreclosure versus foreclosure? Okay. You weren't here when we had that talk. Do you know that difference? Okay. You guys have all heard this again, but repetition
It's great.
often breeds understanding, yes. So earlier we were talking about it, like when you have gone on Zillow or your buyers go on Zillow and they see all of these pre-foreclosure properties. When a homeowner goes 30 days delinquent on a mortgage, their lender files a lis pendens at the county clerk. That is not a foreclosure document. It is not a foreclosure proceeding. It is a lis pendens. It basically says, hi, this person is 30 days late on their mortgage payment and we are preserving our first lien holder placement. That's how they say we are the #1 lien holder. So if there's any other judgments, any other encumbrances on that property, they get paid first. So that's all they're doing is saying these people haven't made a payment. We're making sure we're number one creditor. Zillow regularly trolls county clerk's offices, and they take all the Liz pendants that have been filed, and then they toss them onto their website going pre-foreclosure, pre-foreclosure. And then you get buyers calling you going, I saw this property in foreclosure on Zillow. And I always say to them, does it say pre-foreclosure? And when they say yes, I go, yeah, that house is not for sale. It's not for sale, period. Those homeowners haven't made a payment. Well, couldn't we? No, it's not for sale. For all you know, these people are dealing with health problems and they're paying medical bills right now, and they couldn't make their mortgage payment. Yeah,
So that might be the time that they, if you offered your services, they might say, yes.
there's a lot of agents that go after those pre-foreclosures. Send a notice and say, hey, I saw that a Liz Pendens was filed for your property. While I understand that every homeowner might be going through a difficult time and in this economy, blah, 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 your love letter. But to say, I'd be happy to meet with you and evaluate your property and discuss your options with you, so there are agents who do pursue those pre-foreclosures. But a lot of times, if somebody is not headed to foreclosure, they're just going to be really insulted. Like, how embarrassing. I've got agents reaching out to me because I was late on a mortgage payment. Yay me. And I do know some people have called Zillow and called some of these websites and said, take my house off of there immediately. I'm getting freaking phone calls now, and I didn't want my house on there. Yeah. So some people do go that route. But what we were talking about is that Liz Pendens is not a foreclosure. Now, if you go into 3 months, 6 months that you haven't made a mortgage payment, then, the bank is going to start sending the notices like, we're going to be forced to foreclose. You need to make arrangements. We need to get a payment. Something's got to happen. And it's still owned by the seller, though. The bank doesn't own it. Just because they're getting foreclosure notices does not mean that the bank owns it. They could be getting notifications that they need to appear in court. The bank still doesn't own it. So that's your chance to say, hey, here's your options. Let's look at what your house is worth. And, if we listed it today, you could probably get this much. You'll pay off the lender and you'll keep some money for yourself. And I'm glad we're talking about it again, because I just thought of something else, because I've done this 3 times now in my whole career. What I'm about to tell you. Went and talked to a seller. They were in duress behind and getting all those foreclosure notices and like, what do I do? And they didn't want to lose their house. So what we ended up doing was contacting the lender and saying, hey, they could list the house, sell the house, get this much money, but what they'd really like to do is keep the house. The courts really, they don't really want to foreclose. They want to help people keep their houses. So if that seller says, hey, I want to do a loan modification, the lender has to go through that process with them and see if they can qualify for a loan modification. It's different from a refinance because it's not based on reapproving them and getting them all qualified again and going through the pre-approval process. It's taking that existing loan and basically just kind of reformatting it and say, okay, well, we'll add in these late payments, unpaid interest. And basically it's like resetting the loan.
Yeah.
Like resetting it and saying, okay, well then you can now start making this payment, and they'll even do a graduated one if there is duress, if somebody's going through medical issues or they're taking care of an elderly parent and they've had to drop down to part-time, whatever the case may be, they can also offer, they can also offer like graduated repayment where they say, okay, well, for the next 6 months, you can make this much of a payment every month, but then in the 3rd or 4th, 6th month, that payment's going to go up to this much. And then at the end of a year and a half, it's going to go up to here, and that's where it will stay. So that's a loan modification. That's different from a refinance. but it's where the lender has to work with that homeowner to try and just reterm that loan so that they can stay and keep their house.
Yeah, I understand. My daughter actually had to do this. She was going through divorce. And she couldn't pay it all by herself, you know, so
Yep.
yeah, she did that. They did something.
Yeah,
Maybe she was able to keep it.
no, not unless you're asked. But the attorney is gonna go to court with them. If they feel that they need the realtors, whatever, a lot of times the attorney is just gonna ask you, you know, like, can you send me your CMA? Can you print out some comps for me? You know,
To do a loan modification, you have to go to court?
no, for if you're getting foreclosure, yeah. But yeah, and that's the thing, like, you don't wanna be the agent that shows up to somebody who's behind on their mortgage and getting foreclosure notices and just be like, yeah, I can list it and I can sell it for you and you're gonna get this money. I mean, yeah, it's great for you. You got a listing, they got some money. But if you're being really ethical and standing in integrity, you also wanna ask them, you know, do you wanna stay here? I mean, you're not gonna get paid for this, but you're gonna have the ooey gooey good feelings inside that you did the right thing. You do wanna explain to them that they may be able to get a loan modification.
Right.
You know, but as a service provider, that's your job, is to tell them what their options are and hey, there's also this, why don't you look into this? If you wanna keep the house, you wanna stay here, let's get with your lender. Let's see if they can work out a loan modification for you. And then if that doesn't work and the lender can't put it together in a way that works and the seller's going, or the homeowner is going, yeah, I still can't afford that. Okay, well then let's move back to, let's look at what's gonna happen if you list and how much money you would net from that sale. And what would be your options? What can you do with that money to start over somewhere else? You know, but make sure you're putting all those options on the table for them. So, yeah. Any other questions?
It's great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I popped in later. I love.
Good. We spent an hour. I'm so excited. Like my class lasted an hour.
That's your shortest one, isn't it?
Yes, yes. It truly is.
It was perfect. It was good.
Thank you, thank you. So I always ask everybody, so anybody who's on here too, I do always ask people though, to email Kim or Morgan or Bob or all three of them and just give feedback on the class. What did you like the best? What was your, you know, big takeaway or whatever? Is there anything you'd like me to change about how I present? Or any other questions and information that you feel like could be a whole other class? Okay, they never tell me who says what, so if there's any criticism, constructive criticism too, give it, because that helps me. And they're not gonna tell me who says what, so you're never gonna have me coming up to you going, you told them. It's never gonna happen, so just give some feedback, the good and the bad. And yeah, if you think of any questions, shoot me an email.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I gotta figure out how to close this, cause. And, bye, Johnny.
Hi,
I'll talk to you soon, honey.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.